This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Let's talk about Sefer Daniel. So in the Sefer, we have to get our timing right. First of all, we know that there were two Beit Mikdashot. You had Beit HaMikdash HaRishon, and you had Beit HaMikdash Sheni. This whole story of Sefer Daniel is happening during and after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. We're going to start the conversation, start the story already from when the Beit HaMikdash is around, because that's the background behind the Sefer Daniel. And the first Beit HaMikdash, we know, was built with Shlomo HaMelech. He was the one that built the Beit HaMikdash. David HaMelech laid down the foundations, but Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash. And after Shlomo built Beit HaMikdash, for about 400 years, the Beit HaMikdash was around. There were many kings. Some were great tzaddikim, like Yoshia, like Shlomo himself was a tzaddik, and many others. Hizkiah was considered a righteous king, and certain kings were reshaim. All of this happened towards the last 100 years of the Beit HaMikdash. Already when the Beit HaMikdash was 300 years in its existence, the kingdom of Malchut Yisrael. Malchut Yisrael was the Jewish northern empire. There's the north and then there's the south. The northern empire was 10 Shvatim. You had 10 tribes that were part of it. The southern was Yehuda and Binyamin. Only 2 tribes. Malchut Yehuda was considered to be the more righteous one, because even though both had Avodah Zarah and had some sins, but the sins that happened in the Beit HaMikdash in Shevet Yehuda were far less. The kings were much righteouser than in the Malchut of Yisrael. The Sefer Daniel is a very fascinating Sefer. The Gemara in Masechet Yoma tells us that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, right? What would the Kohen Gadol do on Yom Kippurim? He would do work, and all of the avodah of Yom Kippurim would take place. Sivan, are you paying attention? Okay, good. On Yom Kippurim, he had to do a lot of different works. So the whole night, he wasn't allowed to sleep. He had to wait and prepare himself for the Yom Kippurim. Now, sometimes a person gets tired, especially if he's bored, he could get very tired. So what would they use to teach him? It says, first they would talk to him in Torah. When they saw that he was starting to fall asleep, they would read to him from the Nevi'im. And one of the Nevi'im they would read from is Daniel, because Daniel is very fascinating, it's captivating. There's a lot of interesting things that are happening. Many people don't know a lot about Sefer Daniel. There's so much going on. And essentially, we have the Nevi'im. Does anybody know who was the first of the Nevi'im in the sense of the books? The first of the books of the Nevi'im. You know? Rivka. It's been a while. I haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? Good. Okay, Yehoshua. Yehoshua was the first. After Yehoshua comes Shofetim. After Shofetim, we have Shemuel, and we have Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Bet, and then we have Melachim. Melachim finishes off the story of the different kings, the various kings of Eretz Yisrael. Essentially, Daniel picks off where Melachim ends off. So it begins at the end of Sefer Melachim. Although there are some Nevi'im in between, like Yirmiyah, Yeshaya, but they were prophecies that were at the same time as the end of the Nevi'im. In Sefer Daniel, many, many interesting things take place. A lot of insights. But we know who destroyed the first Beit HaMikdash. Who knows? Who was the one that destroyed the first Beit HaMikdash?
The Greeks?
No. The Greeks didn't destroy any of the Beit HaMikdash. Nebuchadnezzar. Melech Bavel. Nebuchadnezzar was very powerful. And he was the one that was the destroyer of Beit HaMikdash. But in truth, that's only half credit. Because who destroyed Beit HaMikdash? HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nebuchadnezzar was simply a messenger for the destruction. Let's go to the times of King Yehoiakim. Who is Yehoiakim? Yehoiakim was one of the kings of Malchut Yehuda. And this is talking about 100 years after the dissipation of Malchut Yisrael. Malchut Yisrael was around 300 years, and then the Ashurim, Sanheriv, came along and wiped them out. They were gone already. They were out of the picture for the last 100 years. We're talking now... Yeah, Malchut Yehuda. Malchut Yehuda was still around. It was Yerushalayim and the surrounding cities of Yerushalayim. And who was the king of Malchut Yehuda? He was a man with the name Yehoyakim. Yehoyakim was a direct descendant of David HaMelech, but he was literally the worst of the kings. Even Menashe, the Gemara says terrible stories about Menashe, he didn't reach what Yehoyakim reached in terms of evilness. Yehoyakim was a terrible person. He found ways to get HaKadosh Baruch Hu angry just for the sake of getting HaKadosh Baruch Hu angry. He would do it purely because he wanted to frustrate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the types of things he would do, the Avodah Zarah was obvious. He definitely did Avodah Zarah. It says he even had tattoos of Avodah Zarah. He didn't just worship Avodah Zarah. He put it onto his body. He was full of tattoos of Avodah Zarah, but he was also afraid. He didn't do it where people could see. He didn't put it like on his arm or on his face, because then everybody would protest. And Am Yisrael, the whole nation, they were still tzaddikim. They weren't evil like he was. So his evilness, he couldn't show it out in the open. He had to hide it in the inside. So it says like the tattoos that he got that were Avodah Zarah, he had to hide it. According to some opinions, what is asur from the Torah is only tattoos of Avodah Zarah. When the Torah says uchtovet ka'aka, what's the prohibition? Avodah Zarah tattoos. Some say that the other forms of tattoos are only rabbinic, because someone might put Avodah Zarah is very common. People put what they worship and what they appreciate and what they respect. So because it's very common, so if you get one tattoo, you might end up being Oved Avodah Zarah. So Yehoyakim, he was such a rasha that he would do things that were evil even when people didn't see, in order to go and violate the halacha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu even sent a great man. Adam, you listening? Baruch ben Neriah. He was the top student of Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah was the number one prophet. He's the hero. In this whole story of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, if there's one person that stands out, it's Yirmiyah. Because he was a very holy man, a holy prophet. And he had a student whose name was Baruch ben Neriah. Now this student was a great tzaddik. He then became the Rav. Baruch ben Neriah, when Yirmiyah eventually passed away, he became the Rav of Ezra Sofer, who ended up leading Am Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael after the exile. Baruch ben Neriah was the individual that Yirmiyah chose. He specifically said to him, I received a prophecy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I need you to write down this prophecy. Every single word of Yirmiyah, Baruch ben Neriah put down, and this is what is known as Megillat Echa. Echa Yasheva Badad. It says that when Baruch ben Neriah was given the job to read the Megillah to all of Am Yisrael, and most of Am Yisrael was extremely inspired. They heard about the Megillah, what it says about Yasheva Badad, that Yerushalayim, and everything was written in past tense. This was so amazing. It was written as if it already took place. And it's all talking about the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, although the destruction hasn't yet happened. Beit HaMikdash was still around. And this was really supposed to be a warning for Am Yisrael, to make sure that they straighten their ways so it doesn't end up happening. And that was really, really the zechut that Baruch ben Neriah was trying to bring into the world. Bruchim habayim. Come in, sit down, get comfortable. Jonathan, you have a question?
Yeah, so this evil king, he was the worst kind because he hid his tattoos. So if he put his tattoos in a visible place like his arms, he wouldn't be as worse like a robber, right?
Yeah, in a certain way, he was afraid of people because they would have taken him and they said, no, we don't accept this, and they would have put him down. Yeah, so he was afraid. Now, let me tell you how evil he was. When Baruch ben Neriah started reading the Megillah to all of Am Yisrael, everybody was inspired. They all wanted to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This Megillah, he read it to the nobleman, and the nobleman said to him, you have to read this to the king. This is very serious. This is something that pertains to all of Am Yisrael. You must read it before the king. And Baruch ben Neriah said, but I'm afraid for my life. Yoyakim, he cared about, the only thing he cared about was his kingship. You could say whatever you want, but if you threaten his kingship, that was it. And this kind of did. So it says, okay, they wanted to read the Megillah, but they prepared in advance. Yirmiyah already went into hiding because Baruch was the messenger. He wasn't the person who was doing this. He didn't write it really. It was Yirmiyah who told him what to write and how to say it. So Yirmiyah was the person here that was threatened. Yirmiyah went into hiding. And Baruch ben Neriah started reading it to Yoyakim. Yoyakim, he heard the destruction of Yerushalayim, the captivity that Am Yisrael would have to go through. He hears this, he's bothered by it a little bit, but he doesn't make a big deal. He's not even like sorry about it. It doesn't hurt him. All of a sudden he reads that who is going to be ruling over the Jewish people? A different nation, a goy aher. He says, wait a second. He stops them from reading. He says, stop. Does this mean I'm not going to be the king? He gets so angry, he takes the line out, rips it from the Megillat Echa, and everybody's looking at him shocked that he would do such a thing. This is Megillah with Shema Meforash. He takes it with the Shema Meforash and throws that line into the furnace. Throws it into the fire. Everybody says, you can't do this. Asur. How can you go ahead and show such disrespect? He shushes them away. They continue reading a little bit, a few more. Every single line he didn't like in the Megillah, he would take out and he would throw it into the fire. At the very end, they finished reading the entire... Shh, no talking. When I'm talking, nobody else is talking. You have to listen carefully. When he finished reading the entirety of the Megillah, what did he do? He said, okay, great, we're done. Took the entire Megillah and also threw it into the fire. This is how much of a Rasha he was. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he didn't forgive him for this. Why? He would have. If he would have done teshuvah, he would have come back to the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, would have been forgiven. But he never did teshuvah. He never felt anything bad in his heart for doing what he did. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Yirmiyah Navi, prophesies about him, that he's going to die a terrible death, and the same fire that he threw Megillat Echa, he's going to be consumed with. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Yirmiyah to tell him that he's going, because he's such a Rasha, he's not going to get a proper burial. He will never be buried in the ground. Yeah, question.
Is the king, I'm forgetting his name.
Yoyakim.
Yoyakim, is he the king that a weird kind of bug came into his ear and ate his brain?
No, that was somebody else. That wasn't a Jew. That was Titus. Gabriel, you have a question?
Yeah. If you said that there's a king, he would never be buried properly into the ground. So does that mean we could still see him today?
No, you'll see. I'll tell you a little bit about what happened to him. Okay, so we're holding by 18 years before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. This is called the first Galut of Yerushalayim. There were 3 exiles during the first Beit HaMikdash. 3 different parts of Am Yisrael went into exile. The first Galut was referred to as Galut Yehoyakim. Yehoyakim was the king. Yeshaya tells him, 15 years before he's about to go into Galut, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells, not Yeshaya, Yirmiyah. He tells Yirmiyah, make yourself bars, wooden bars, and put it on your neck as a yoke. And go around all of Eretz Yisrael and tell them that Nebuchadnezzar is going to become king, and Nebuchadnezzar is going to conquer the whole territory of Eretz Yisrael, and not only Eretz Yisrael, by the way, Edom, Ammon, Moab, the whole surrounding area. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will is that you don't resist the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar, but rather you comply. Comply. You know what the word comply means? It means to go and to cooperate, to go along with the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, because if you resist and you fight, you will end up being killed, you will end up in hunger and in suffering. So do not resist. And Yirmiyah went with this prophecy in Eretz Israel and also to all the Goyim, because prophets weren't just given to the Jews. They were given to Am Yisrael, and the prophecies were also for the Goyim. And he explained to them that this is what they must do in order for the anger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to subside. So the Galut could have been done in two ways. It could have been very, very terrible, or if Am Yisrael would have followed, at least followed the advice of the prophet and the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it wouldn't have been as bad. What do you think Yehoiakim went and did? Instead of listening to Yirmiyah and actually cooperating, he ignored Yirmiyah, as he always did. And Nebuchadnezzar, over the course of the 15 years, and over the course of the whole time, Yirmiyah, literally every day, wearing a yoke. Could you imagine somebody such a great tzaddik, going along every day, carrying a yoke, and traveling the cities, to warn Am Yisrael to accept the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar? For so long, 15 years. Yehoiakim doesn't listen. He doesn't care what Yirmiyah has to say. He was so angry at Yirmiyah for doing this that he wanted to kill him. He said, Yirmiyah must be caught and must be killed. Although Yirmiyah managed to escape and the people defended Yirmiyah. Every single time he wanted to kill, the people didn't let him. They said, no, you can't do this. So they were tzaddikim. He was the Rasha. You have a question, Binyamin? Go ahead.
Two questions.
Yeah.
First question is, what's a yoke really?
Yoke is the burden
And
you put on yourself.
And the second question is, how did they get the Megillah again? He burnt the whole thing.
They rewrote it. They had different copies of it. They copied it a few times so that they figured that something like that might happen, and they prepared for it. But what ended up taking place with Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar started building himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does this amazing thing. When he wants the Reshaim to succeed against Am Yisrael, he empowers them. He brings them up. So Nebuchadnezzar started becoming very, very strong very quickly. He became king. He ended up defeating Mitzrayim. He ended up defeating a lot of other surrounding kingdoms. And then he conquered Yerushalayim. At this point, he did not destroy Beit HaMikdash. He conquered Yerushalayim. He conquered Yehoiakim. And he made him swear allegiance, which means that he gave him his word. He swore to him that he's going to be loyal to Nebuchadnezzar. And he would pay taxes, and he would listen to Nebuchadnezzar, and he would follow whatever the rules Nebuchadnezzar lays. Those are the rules that are to be followed. He took an oath. Yirmiyah begged him to keep his promise. Do not rebel. Do not rebel. No listening. He went and he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, left with his armies. The minute he left, he started rebelling. He didn't pay the taxes. He didn't follow any of the rules, any of the restrictions. And this was against the orders that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him to follow. Nebuchadnezzar hears about this. The first year, he didn't do anything about it. He wanted to see. He was busy with other campaigns. He let it slide. The second year, didn't do anything. The third year, he came with his armies. And he came to defeat Yerushalayim. And again, remember, this is 18 years before the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Chachamim were very nervous. They said, he's going to come, he's going to kill, he's going to destroy us, and then he's going to burn Beit HaMikdash. All because of the stubbornness of this silly king. So they said, we're going to meet him. Nebuchadnezzar at the time was staying at the place called Rivla. Rivla was a city in the outskirts of Yerushalayim, ready to attack. Chachamim say, we would like to meet with you. The leaders of the generation saying they want to meet with Nebuchadnezzar, he accepted. He wasn't interested in destroying Am Yisrael. He accepted. They sat down with him and they said, is it your intention to destroy Beit HaMikdash? He says, no. What is it that you want? Yehoiakim. That's who I want. He says, if we give you Yehoiakim, you don't destroy Beit HaMikdash. I leave the Beit HaMikdash. Follow the rules that I put in place. Hand over Yehoiakim, and that's all I ask for. They said, if this is the case, let's see what we could do. They come back to Yehoiakim, and they explain to him the situation. They say, we have to turn you in. He says, what do you mean you're going to turn me in? You're not going to turn me in. The Torah says, and here all of a sudden it became a tzaddik. Torah says when a slave runs away from his master, you're not allowed to return him back to his master. Lo tasgir eved el adonav. And you're going to take me and make me an eved. I'm less than an eved that not even a Jewish slave, a Goyish slave. And you're going to do less to me and you're going to give me over to Nebuchadnezzar. They said, that's different. Here, he called you out by name. He asked for you by name. All of Am Yisrael is in danger. We don't give you to him, then he's going to destroy Am Yisrael. You're not more important than Am Yisrael. And if you remember, many years back, in the times of David HaMelech, there was a man named Sheva ben Bichri. Sheva ben Bichri, he led a rebellion. He led an assault against David HaMelech and his kingship. And what happened was, he had to escape David HaMelech because his armies were very weak. He had to escape in a certain city. And the general of David HaMelech at the time, Yoav ben Tzeruya, told the city very clearly, you hand over Sheva ben Bichri, nothing happens to you. You don't hand him over, I'm going to get him and I'm going to destroy everybody in the city. Men, women, and children will all be killed. And you know what they did? They handed him over. Because in that situation, if they're looking for one person who's a rasha, who's not doing what God wants from him, then you give him over and you save everybody else. You, Yoakim, were told direct orders by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to not rebel against Nebuchadnezzar. And you're a rasha. You didn't listen to him. So you know what's going to happen to you? We're going to give you to Nebuchadnezzar. And they tied him up. It says the Chachamim, God, all the bodyguards, they explained to them. They tied up Yoakim and they went ahead and they got him really strong, took him and threw him over the walls of Yerushalayim. It says he arrived at the other side. Nebuchadnezzar saw that they gave him what he wanted, except Yoakim, because he was so used to being king and having all this enjoyment and all of this pampering, luxury and pampering that he had. So what happened was he was very fragile. So when they, dealt with him very harshly, and they threw him over the wall, he died. He was dead. So Nebuchadnezzar expected him alive. He wanted him to be alive so he could take him to Bavel, and that he can go ahead and explain, look, I'll make him a slave, and it's a pride for the king to capture another king and to make him a slave of his. So Nebuchadnezzar was upset, but he left Am Yisrael alone. At that point, he left him, but at least when it came to Yoakim, he said to his people, don't bury him. Take him and throw him into the carcass of a dead donkey. They took his body and they put it in the carcass of a dead donkey. And that's where he was. Tell you a story, 300 years later, in the times of Rabbi Leeor Dahan. The Gemara says he lived in Yerushalayim. This was after many, many years of the destruction and the returning. Rabbi Leeor Dahan was walking in the fields outside of Yerushalayim, and he saw a skull. He says, there's a skull here. That means it's a person, most likely a Jew. Who else would be in Yerushalayim? Most likely the skull of a Jew that wasn't buried. I have a mitzvah to bury it. He takes the skull. He says, mitzvah kana mekomo. He dug right there in the field, dug a burial, and put the skull in the ground and covered it with dirt. It doesn't have to be 6. He covered it enough that it won't show in the ground. The whole body is 6 feet. What happened was, it rose. It didn't get buried. It just came out. He says, what's this? He takes it again. He says, maybe I didn't dig deep enough. He digs even deeper and covers it again with dirt. Turns around. 30 seconds later, he sees it's out again. He realizes this is the skull of Yoakim. The Navi, Yeshaya and Yirmiyah, they said he's not going to be buried, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want him buried. So his skull kept on floating up. So he says, if that's the case, then I can't bury him. But nevertheless, he said, wait a second. To leave him like this, he's still, even though he's a rasha, but he's Jew, I have to do something. I can't just leave it on the field. So he took the skull. It says he took it home. He wrapped it up nicely, respectfully. He was a Jewish king. Put it in a box and left it. He said, burying it, I know I can't do, but left it by the gates of Yerushalayim. Who was watching him as he's doing this? His wife. This is an amazing story. His wife was watching him, and she had no idea what he was doing. She just saw him taking something very delicately, very lovingly, and she sees him, and she's covering it and taking. She didn't ask him. She went to her neighbors, and she said, I saw my husband doing something very strange. He took a skull, and he was wrapping it up, and he hid it away. She said, you know what? We know what that is. That was probably his first wife. He loved her so much. He doesn't want to forget about her. So he wrapped it up and he put it in a box. Surely that was his first wife that he doesn't want to forget. Now she hears this as his wife, right? She's not happy with that. She's very upset. Yeah, it's brought down in the Gemara, Sanhedrin. She's not happy with this. So what does she do? She goes to the gates of Yerushalayim. She takes the skull out of all the things, puts it in the oven, the furnace, throws it into the furnace. It says that by the time it was finished, it was ashes. There was nothing left of the skeleton, of the skull of Yehoiakim, and that was his punishment. It was purposely designed. Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't want any remnant of him left in the world. I had a pshat that, there's a famous misconception. This is something that occurred to me as I was learning this. There's a famous misconception that people have, that someone that has a tattoo is not allowed to be buried, or not buried in a Jewish cemetery. All these rumors. It's not true. Ask Rabbi Zon. Rabbi Zon is the Chevra Kadisha. There's no such halacha. A person who violates and gets a tattoo is doing something asur. But just because he did something asur doesn't mean he doesn't get a Jewish burial. It was always bothering me. Where did this rumor start from? Pshat is from here. Meaning, what has happened? Yehoiakim, one of the things the Torah mentions that he did was, as a Rasha, was he got a tattoo of Avodah Zarah. And Yirmiyah said to him that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is punishing you for your evilness, that you won't have a burial. And then we see a story from Rabbi Leeor that every time he got buried, his body would rise. So it could be that they understood from this that if a person has a tattoo, he's not going to be able to be buried. He's not allowed to be buried. From this midrash. But in truth, it's not the mistake is that our responsibility is like Rabbi Leeor, to bury. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides in terms of prophecy, that's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in truth, it's still a mitzvah for us to do the burial. Either way, what do we see from here? Yehoiakim was a terrible, terrible Rasha. He was a person that did many things that were evil. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he gave him the prophecy, and also there was midah keneged midah. What's midah keneged midah? Measure for measure. How was this measure for measure? What did Yehoiakim go and do? He took Megillat Echa and he threw it into the fire. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to take my Shem, my Megillah, and throw it into the fire? Just like you threw that into the fire, the wife of Rabbi Leeor took your skull and also will throw it into the fire. That was his punishment. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu always ends up punishing the Reshaim. Very patient, by the way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very patient. He has plenty of time. He's not rushing. The Reshaim, if not today, then tomorrow, but eventually they get punished. Tov. Now, on this first galut, the first exile we said happened is called Galut Yehoiakim. Who was exiled at this time? When Nebuchadnezzar got hold of Yerushalayim, and we said he left the Beit HaMikdash intact. He only took Yehoiakim. He didn't destroy Am Yisrael. But he did take certain people out of Yerushalayim. Who were they? They were called the Hakimei Yerushalayim, the wisest of Yerushalayim, HaHeresh ve'Amsager, as the Gemara calls them. The most biggest geniuses of Yerushalayim were taken away to Bavel. Now there's a few things that we have to make clear. The geniuses of Yerushalayim, anybody in Yerushalayim, forget the geniuses of Yerushalayim, anybody in Yerushalayim, when they would go to other parts of Eretz Yisrael, you know what they would do? The city, let's say a person from Yerushalmi, they would say, your seat is up there. They would put him in the front. And they would then say, everybody stop what you're doing. He's going to give us a shiur. Like it was automatic. It was assumed. You're going to give us a shiur and you're going to tell us from the wisdom of Yerushalayim. Because the people of Yerushalayim were known to be super, super smart. Naftali Shalom. Reuven, face me, please. Face my direction. So they were such hakimeh. They were so wise that Nebuchadnezzar, who was a Rasha, but one of the things that's true about Rishaim is because they're